Hi, my name is Tony Rossel. I am with Neighbours of Hespeler Village, and today I am here with Ethan Russell, who is the candidate for the Green Party for Kitchener South and Hespeler. So what I've done with all of the candidates I've interviewed, I've sent them questions ahead of time so that way they can prepare. And because I'm a very open and friendly and talkative guy, I'm going to just try to just stick to asking the questions, so that way you, the viewer, can make that final decision on whom you're going to be casting your vote for on the 28th. So, Ethan, thank you for joining me today. So for the first question, can you introduce yourself and share why you decided to run for office?
Yeah. Thank you so much, Tony. It's great to be here. Great to do this little interview with you. Yeah. So as you said, my name is Ethan Russell. I'm the Green Party candidate here in Kitchener South Hespeler. Yeah, I'm a pretty young guy. I'm 21 years old, and I'm currently a student studying at Conestoga College, studying with the Bachelor of Early Learning Program Development. So it's a very educator, early childhood education, curriculum development, program planning, stuff like that. But I've also, been involved in politics for a good few years now, and I felt like right now was just kind of a time where we couldn't let the opportunity slip us by and just not run a candidate here in Kitchener, or to simply have somebody move in from out of town to fill a spot just so that we could say we ran somebody. I felt like we needed somebody who could, actually stand up for our community, who knows our community, who's lived in it for my entire life. And I think that at this moment, if it had to be me, I was willing to just take that opportunity, dive in, and make the run.
Okay, perfect. So this riding includes both Hespeler and South Kitchener. So because I'm with Neighbours of Hespeler Village, what does Hespeler mean to you personally, and how do you see your role in serving both communities?
Yeah, I mean, in a lot of ways, I do kind of see the entire KW region as being like almost one big city. It's kind of this idea of
Tri-Cities.
Yeah, we are the Tri-Cities, and we're so connected that when I do go and I see my family in Cambridge, it's almost like we didn't even move cities. It feels like it's almost the same place. I have an uncle on my father's side who lives in Hespeler, and when I started this, I went over to him and I wanted, it's like, hey, introduce me to your neighbors, show me them, see, like, let me talk to the people. And what I really found was that while obviously Hespeler has a lot of its own unique culture, it has its own history, its own look, its own vibe. It's still very similar, to what I see here in Kitchener. I'm hearing a lot of the same things from the people. I'm hearing a lot of the same concerns. And I also see that history reflected across the region. So, I think I have friends who live in Cambridge. I have family who live in Cambridge. I've loved Cambridge all my life. I do see myself not as just somebody from Kitchener, but as somebody from the KW region. We're one big family, and I think that's important to hold and maintain and improve on.
Okay, thank you for that. So what are your top 3 priorities if you get elected?
I would say number one, something a bit personal. Like I mentioned, I'm currently studying with the Bachelor of Early Learning Program Development. I want to protect and improve the $10 a day childcare benefit. I think that is one thing that has gotten some attention, but not nearly enough. We've seen that the Liberals seem pretty content with maintaining it. And, I give them applause for putting it in. It's a great program, but there's still so much that we have to do to improve it. And I think they have been shaky on whether or not they want to do that. And the Conservatives have wanted to scrap it. So I want to ensure that that program is protected, that families and educators can have safety and security in, their job, where their child is going to go, who's going to be taking care of that child. And I think that is just something that is so valuable to me that I want to make sure that that is a very focal point of my time if I get elected.
Yeah.
I also really want to ensure that, we are protecting Canada's economy, we're protecting Canada's sovereignty, that we're just trying to make sure that Canada is a safe place.
Mm-hmm.
We're at a time now where we're so under threat from basically everybody, it feels like sometimes, where, we talk about this idea of like, oh, well, we have these trade deals with the EU, but are they being followed? Are they going through? Has it been ratified on their end? We see the threats coming from the United States, and I think we need somebody who's going to step up and say, hey, like, we need to ensure that these things are being followed through, that we have a diverse portfolio of trade partners. And I think that that is just something that I personally am really passionate about. And I think for number 3, as somebody in a much smaller party, I am very passionate about electoral reform. I think that it is very important that we say, hey, look, we can we need to push for a better democracy. We have a democracy right now where somebody can get like 25% of the vote and then all of a sudden have 100% of the power.
Mm-hmm.
So I think it's important that we find a way away from that towards a fairer system that represents, our own personal, like, actual values as a country.
Mm-hmm. Okay, perfect. So for the next question, what issues and concerns are Hespeler or Kitchener residents bringing up most often in your conversations?
The two that I have seen are internally healthcare. Healthcare was not something that I mentioned in those three, mostly because I feel like it is such a ubiquitous issue that people are bringing up that it's almost kind of obvious. But healthcare is something that I am hearing so much.
Mm-hmm.
I just had an interview early today where I talked about the fact that, back in October, I had my wisdom teeth removed.
Mm-hmm.
I also had a cyst out of one of them, so I had to get that removed. That added up, that just way increased the cost.
Mm-hmm.
Over the summer, I had a heart problem, and so I was in the hospital for 6 hours.
Mm-hmm.
And so much of that was simply waiting.
Mm-hmm.
It feels like a lot of the times it's just we have these hospitals that may not be properly funded, or they might be properly funded, but the funding isn't being allocated properly. Or we have nurses who are hopping from job to job to job to job. And it's like, well, it feels like there's an allocation problem. It feels like there's a funding problem. And it feels like there are bigger problems that the government just isn't addressing. Now, this gets a bit into provincial territory,
Mm-hmm.
but I do think that, the federal government still like mandates our health insurance. We have the dental care plan. We have the pharmacare plan. We need to protect those. We need to expand those. The other thing that I've been hearing a lot of is just concerns with tariffs. I'm sure you've also been hearing a lot about this, but there's a lot of uncertainty with the fact that so much of our economy is now dependent on a nation that seems to want to destroy us.
Mm-hmm.
And people, even if their jobs don't really depend on the states, they're still concerned about what that will bring for the wider political and socioeconomic economy.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that is something that, every time it's always those two things plus another issue that is important to them.
Yeah.
But like healthcare and concerns with what is happening with the United States right now.
Yeah. Okay. All right. So the next question is, what sets you apart from the other candidates in this election?
So I would say a big thing for me is just the fact that I have a lot of initiative. I mentioned I'm only a 21-year-old. I'm still a student. I have 2 exams on Monday, end of the debate. But a lot of this comes from the fact that I'm willing to do this because I'm just driven to.
Mm-hmm.
I bring a lot of initiative to the table. And I think that is something that, as a member of parliament, I want to fight for, my constituents. And I'm not going to simply sit there at the table, vote, leave. I want to make sure that I'm reachable, I'm there, and that I'm always driven to put forth those private member bills, even if they don't go anywhere, just
Mm-hmm.
making sure that like our voice are being heard.
Mm-hmm.
I also think I kind of almost see myself as of two worlds. It's like, as you said, I am young. Like, as I said, I am young. I am a 21-year-old. I'm a college student. I know the struggles that college students are going through right now. I see them every day when I go to class.
Yeah.
I see the damage that we're doing to young people with the housing crisis, with the mental health crisis, with the loneliness crisis. But I'm also old enough and have enough experience that I can see, like what adults are also going through, what people far older than me are having.
Mm-hmm.
Working in childcare, in my time, I've seen parents come in who have to have a different person pick up their kid every day because they're picking up random shifts here and there to pay to have their child there.
Mm-hmm.
And I think, talking to those parents and whatnot, it gives me a lot of that focus towards like, okay, there are bigger issues than just what is happening at my college campus. And I'm able to see those issues and I want to act on them.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. So how does your party plan to handle economic and trade challenges, including tariffs and policies from major global players like the United States?
Yeah, so a big part about our policy is this idea of just diversify the economy, diversify our trade portfolio. Canada is currently a resource extraction economy
Mm-hmm.
that mainly focuses on shipping to the United States. We cut down a tree, we ship it to the United States. We pull oil out of the ground, we ship it to the United States. We mine gold out of Yukon, we ship it to the United States. It feels like that's it sometimes. Like it feels like so much of our economy is just rip it out of the ground, ship it to the States.
Mm-hmm.
Our plan is basically, hey, what if instead we move towards still like resource extraction? We will always need that. There's not going to be a Canada, at least anytime soon, that just looks like the Waterloo Tech Corridor, but across the entire country.
Mm-hmm.
You're always going to have some level of that. But why don't we keep some of those resources here? Let's expand our manufacturing industry.
Yeah.
Sweden has a massive lumber industry, much like us. However, instead of just shipping out raw wood, they furnish the wood. They turn it into planks. They turn it into furniture, and then they ship that.
Mm-hmm.
So while we have a bigger lumber industry, just on the basis of we are physically bigger,
Mm-hmm.
they also have an incredibly strong lumber industry because it's focused on finished lumber, not just raw wood that we cut down and threw over to another country.
Yeah.
I think that is a big part about what we need to do. Now, another big part of that is, diversifying also what our economy is. Like I mentioned, KW region, we're not a resource economy. We are a local economy that has some manufacturing, but the bulwark of, Kitchener, Waterloo, Cambridge, and even some of Guelph now is our tech industry. It is this massive booming tech industry that is driving us to be one of the fastest growing cities in the country.
Mm-hmm.
We can move away from just resource extraction. We can build a stronger economy that encourages investment from all over the world by also investing in sectors that aren't just, natural resources.
Mm-hmm.
And of course, we also need to, diversify our trade portfolio.
Yeah.
If we're going to extract, let's extract, but let's not just ship to the United States. My father's work recently, he works in manufacturing,
Mm-hmm.
and a lot of his stuff goes to the United States.
Yeah.
But recently they've been opening up Taiwan, Japan, China, these Asian partners. Let's trade more with Europe. Let's trade more with Africa. Let's not have 80% of our economy dependent on a nation that could, on a whim, because Wisconsins were uppity one day, decide, hey, we want to throw away your economy.
Yeah.
I think we need those safety nets, and those safety nets only come from diversify the economy, diversify the trade portfolio.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. Okay. So this question is for you personally. So I think you've mentioned it several times that you're 21. So that's good. You're not pretending that you're not. So how can voters be confident that you have the experience and maturity to represent our community effectively? And I believe you did speak to it a little bit beforehand already. So
yeah, I mean, I think a bit of it when it comes to maturity is that, I understand that some voters will always kind of correlate maturity to age.
Mm-hmm.
And I will never win those voters. So I can recognize that. But if we're willing to recognize maturity as a sense of experience,
yeah,
I do think that I have the experience that, shows a level of maturity.
Yeah.
When I was 17, I got elevated from bakery clerk of my job to bakery supervisor.
Yeah.
So all of a sudden at 17, not even a legal adult yet, I was the supervisor at my work.
Mm-hmm.
I was told, like, you close a loan, count the tills, do whatever you want, go.
Yeah.
And they trusted me to do that. Back in Boxing Day 2022, busiest day of the year, they told me, okay, all of the other supervisors and managers who did the open, you do the close from 3:30 till we closed. It was me in charge of the whole thing.
Yeah.
And that is a big responsibility to put on somebody, but I did it successfully.
Yeah.
Since then, for the past few months, I've been president of the Green Party Constituency Association here in Kitchener, South Hespeler.
Mm-hmm.
I've been, my program at Conestoga has a program advisory council where they take, people from around the region and say, how can we improve the program? And I'm the student representative for them. So it's my responsibility to talk to my classmates and be like, what do you feel is working and not working with the program?
Yeah.
So I think a lot of what it comes to is just, I have a lot of experience with it. I come with, that wealth of, I am willing to do things, even if they're difficult. And I think that at the core of it is what maturity is. It's the ability to take on those roles, to learn from them and to grow. Yeah. I've seen people triple my age who don't have that ability. So I don't really believe that age fully determines maturity. Yeah. I understand if people say, you're a little too young for me, because even I would love to have my bachelor's before I do this. But I also think that doesn't fully paint the full picture. Yeah, no, that does make sense. And thank you for that. That was a very thorough answer. Okay, so this one is, a question I've asked everyone. So what does Canada mean to you, and what does it mean to be Canadian? And what are you hoping Canada will look like for not only this generation, but future generations as well? I got into a debate with some people over this answer, but I think that Canada, at its core, is a nation of evolution.
Okay.
I think at its core, it's a nation that evolves and changes. I've seen people talk about how, like, around this time of Canadian sovereignty, say, oh, we should uplift people like John A. Macdonald, you know, our father of Confederation. And I'm like, you know, as somebody who nearly went to go study history, I gotta ask the question of how does he really represent what Canada is now? What has he done to represent Canada? Canada is very different than when it was in the 1860s. And that is what makes me so proud to be Canadian. It's the fact that, you know, we've changed our constitution completely in the 1980s. And since the 1980s, we've evolved and changed further. And we can just do that. You know, you look to the United States and you see them, and, you know, they still have the Electoral College, this old archaic institution. You know, you have the Supreme Court stacked with people who firmly believe that they should see the Constitution through the lens of how the Founding Fathers originally intended it. But here we are saying, no, our country should grow and change with the times. And that is what's made me so proud to be Canadian, is the fact that we can look and we can say, hey, Canada failed here, here, and here. You know, we had a eugenics program. We maybe committed a genocide against the Indigenous. It's like, these are things that we did, but we can learn and grow from them. And we can create new definitions for ourselves. And I think being Canadian is growing with that. You know, and that's not to say that, you know, the people who are perhaps more conservative than me are not Canadian, people who aren't willing to accept that. But fundamentally, it is the fact that we are a nation of change. We're a nation of growth, of evolution. We're not a nation defined by one single event or one single person. We're a nation of people.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you for that. Okay. So thank you. Those were my questions. So the last one is, if people want to speak with you or learn more about you and your platform, what is the best way to get a hold of you?
Well, the single best way is probably just reach out to me by email. Just my name, Ethan Russell 003@gmail.com. I do also have a public Facebook page, Russell for KSH, and a public Instagram page, Russell for KSH.
Okay. KSH. Okay, perfect. Well, thank you again for your time, Ethan. I appreciate it. Thank you for casting your name for the ballots, and yeah, I wish you and the other constituents good luck as you guys are going out there trying to make Canada a better place. So, all right, thank you
so much.